tardes. Miami. Nada. Bueno, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for sticking around. I know everybody's excited about the happy hour. I'm excited to be here. My name is Carolina Veira. My pronouns are she, her, ella. Very proud to say that. So hopefully, don't forget to share your pronouns, everybody. Thank you for sticking around. In my panel discussion, I'm surrounded by wonderful community leaders, not only the ones that are sitting here. I can name a few. I can see you guys. Thank you for being here, but also this wonderful, wonderful leaders who are going to discuss everything around the Hispanic Promise. And for those who don't know what the Hispanic Promise is, it's simply a promise made by corporations and corporate America more than anything to promote, to retain, to celebrate, to invest in Latino talent. So we want our organizations, we want more corporations, we want corporate America to stick around, to put the, what do they say? The money where their mouth is that right? And invest in us. So hopefully you agree with that. Don't we need more Latino talent in all positions of power? Yes or no? Absolutely. So that's what we're going to discuss today. And I'm happy to be hosting here. So let me start with asking this wonderful panelist, what is your DI story? Share with us your DI story and don't forget your pronoun.
You want me to start?
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
Hola, my name is Carla Santiago. I'm the general manager of Edelman's Miami office. A pleasure to be here with you today. I was born and raised in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and and I've been in what we call mainland U.S. For the past 20 plus years. I did graduate from high school in Puerto Rico. I went to undergrad at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. And then I did my grad school at the New York University. My career quickly, I started in PR about 15 years ago at Edelman's New York office, working on their multicultural team. And from there, I moved down here to Miami. Many people told me that was career suicide. How do you leave the media center and the media universe of the world to move to El Pueblo de Miami? Back then, it did not look like it looks now. But I've had an incredible career since I moved down here, and it is the best thing that has happened to me. So I spent another 5 years at another of the large public relations agency, and then I went in-house for 3 years. And I actually focused my career for 3 years in Latin America with Hyatt Hotels Corporation. And 3 years ago, I came back to the agency side, and I've been for the past 3 years with Edelman Miami, and excited for the work that we're doing. And I'm looking forward to tell you a little bit more about that.
Thank you, Lisette.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Hola. So my name is Lisette Ibarra. I'm the CEO of Latina Chief. And a little bit about my story. I've been in the talent acquisition arena for 25 years, but my personal story splits in two, right? My first 10 years were in corporate. I saw myself as the CHRO of a large corporation. But then guess what? My first son came to the stage. So I decided to transition from corporate to consulting because that would allow me to be, more flexible and to be, closer to my son at that time. So being a woman, that's an important part of diversity. It's driven, some big decisions of my career. So that was part one. And at that stage, I founded my first executive search firm. And I built it around women that had to leave their corporate jobs, and corporation wouldn't take them back. And they were fantastic. They were super talented. So I built my first executive search firm around those women. So fast forward, I moved 9 years ago to the States. I think I'm a newbie here. I've been here 20 years, 25 years. So not for me. I've been here for 9 years. A newbie, Mexican American too. So very proud of that. And last year, I decided to launch Latina Chief with a very clear purpose, and that is to increase executive representation of Hispanics and Latinos in corporate America. So we'll talk more about that, and a lot of what inspired me to do that is my personal journey. Being here and see this lack of representation, and it's so important that we do something about it. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Lisette. Joy.
Thank you. My name is Joy Dettorre. I would say hola, but I'm afraid it would sound very gringa because I might be one of the only ones here in the room. Another gringa, okay. A few of us unite, but I'm actually here, as Claudia said, it was really hard to hear the statistics and my heart not be wounded. Because as Samí said to me, that I'm a heart heritage, because I think sometimes allies feel so passionate about your struggles. And I happen to be one of those heart heritages through marriage. So my spouse is Colombian. And as I think about the journey coming here, did somebody say it was Colombian Independence Day?
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I'm going to go home and be a winner. I appreciate that. But listening to the story of migrating here, not knowing the language, understanding the struggle going on, getting a undergraduate degree, a master's degree, a doctorate degree, and then proudly married to that person. It warms my heart. So thank you so much for letting allies be present in this conversation. I think we are an important part of the dialogue. A little bit about me. So I do work at IBM. I'm a global head of diversity and inclusion. I've been at IBM for 2 decades. I've probably had 6 major career changes since I've been at IBM, most recently in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. And I'm excited to be on this panel with these amazing people. So thank you so much for your warm welcome, because you are a loving culture. Thank you for always embracing me and letting me be here.
Thank you so much, Joy. Jorge, just so you know, people, sometimes they correct me and they say, no, it's George. So at this point, Jorge, please. Go ahead.
So it's so great to be here and so good to see a number of friends and colleagues I highly respect here. Thank you, Claudia, for having us and for doing this in Miami. And Carolina and the whole team that has worked on this. It's so great to see these conversations happening here in Miami. Many times they happen in other places, and I think it's important that we have these sorts of dialogues here in our hometown. So really quick on me, I was born here. Actually, literally you can throw a rock at where I was born. I was born at Doctors Hospital, which is right off campus. Literally as you drive out, you'll see a hospital. That's where I was born. My family exiled from Cuba in the early 60s. My parents met here in Miami years later. And my brother and I were both born in the States. We were brought up, and I was just having this conversation with Natalia. We were brought up so proud of our heritage, right? We were so proud of our culture, of our folklore, of our music, our food, our everything that went with our culture. Yet very grateful to this country, right? And very grateful to the fact that this was a harbor that welcomed our family. And I think that was instilled in me since I was, since I can remember. And it really marked who I became, right? And I've always been passionate about our culture and about giving back to it, and have been working in marketing, communications, media, sports, music, my whole career, different realms, but always doing my best in whatever little role I've had to do, like we'd say in Spanish, poner mi granito de arena, excuse me, my little speck of dust, or of sand to uplift our culture, right? And I think that's what's important. So now that 4 years ago, my company, we merged with a larger company called Havas, part of the Vivendi, which is based in Europe, in Paris. And I'm on the North America DEI committee. And, when I'm sitting there, I channel the fact that I represent many people as my voice is there, right? And I take that to heart, and I'm always thinking of how we can advance our culture and uplift it. Also, a little piece of me was I was board chair of an organization called Unidos US, formerly the National Council of La Raza, which is the largest Hispanic civil rights and advocacy organization. Again, when I was there, I was on that board for 10 years and then became board chair. It was building bridges between communities, right? And as a Miamian, again, going back to some of what you were saying, you know, a lot of these sorts of conversations were, you know, didn't happen as much here. And I remember when I joined that board, a lot of people were like, what are you doing there? That's a Mexican organization. I was like, no, it's an organization that represents all of us, right? And I think that's what's important, that we kind of take off the badges of where we're from, but that we, as somebody was saying earlier, that we be united with one community. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. Samí.
Buenas tardes. I'm Samí Haiman-Marrero, the president of URBANDER, Boricua, Puerto Rican, by way of New Yorican parents who raised us in Puerto Rico. After I obtained my master's degree at the University of Puerto Rico in communications, I went to New York City because it's the media capital of the world. Why not? And after a career there and also facing, right, what it is to be an immigrant, even though we're American citizens, right? Those experiences, you know, in a white male-dominated corporate sector really cemented my role as an advocate internally in every capacity that I've functioned in, or every role that I've had. And so in 2008, I lost my job because of the recession. I had two options. Either I stand on a line with 500 other people vying for that one job that would pay what I knew I was worth, right? And among them, there were white males. Y todo esto reflects clearly Latina, right? Or do I put el machete entre los dientes, right? And start my own business. And so that's what I did. And here we are 14 years later, helping transform businesses to advance humanity through the work that we do.
And they're all rocking it. And this is what we bring to the table, right? This is what we bring to corporations, this beautiful diversity. Everyone sitting here is an example of that. With that in mind, and I want to start with Lisette, when thinking of all these pillars that we talk about with the Hispanic Promise, and particularly the hiring and recruiting pillar, on your experience, how can organizations attract diverse talent, particularly Hispanics and people of color in general?
Okay, yeah, so thank you for that question. I think we all like statistics. We've talked a lot about statistics today, but I think we missed one. And let me ask you, to the audience, do you know what is the representation of Hispanics and Latinos in executive ranks in corporate America? Any idea? What? 4%, you've got that right. So we're the fastest growing minority, right? 17.6%, if I remember correctly from this morning, and we're the least represented minority. Just to give you, an example, the Black community, they're 13% of the population, and they're, pretty fairly represented in corporate America. For us, it's not the same. Why? I have different theories, but that even corporations get surprised because they don't know this. They don't know the correlation between the population and how least represented we are in corporate America. So, with that being said, we need to be super proactive and super intentional of bringing that representation to the top, because we're pretty fairly represented in the basic workforce. But what about the top ranks? Because change is going to come from the top, and that will be like my first advice to corporations. Commitment to build diverse executive teams comes from the top. It's not going to happen otherwise. You have to bring the CEO, the board, the executive committee, on board in building a diverse team of executives. And that strategy has to be honest and transparent. When it's cheesy or forced, it's gonna show, and it's not gonna work in order to attract, the level of talent that you want to bring to the table. Now, the other part is, if as a company, as a corporation, you have really good, diversity inclusion programs, ERGs, show it off. You have to put it out there, because when you recruit a top executive or any candidate, it's going to go to your website, it's going to go to your social media and see what you're doing. So whatever you're doing, whether you have the most beautiful diversity and inclusion strategy, or just start getting started, show it off. Communicate your employee value proposition. So, candidates feel attracted to working with you, and be very clear about your purpose. When you have a purpose as a company, as a business, and it links to your diversity strategy, it works beautifully to attract candidates. And last but not least, I want to say, Don't hire Hispanics or Latinos or any minority just because they're a minority. Hire them because they're great. We're great. So my advice to the corporations we work with is, build a super diverse pool of candidates, equally talented. And then if you have the choice, choose the Hispanic or choose the Latino, because chances are you're the least represented there. But it has to be that way. You don't want to sacrifice skills or capabilities for a minority. It doesn't work that way. It has to be the other way around. Find the best talent, and trust me, I do that, day in and day out. There's magnificent Hispanic and Latino talent to be in executive ranks in corporate America.
It's about being intentional and showing your numbers.
Exactly.
Jorge, would you like to add something?
No, I think I couldn't, you said it perfectly, right? I think many times what ends up happening is as they're looking for talent, they're checking boxes. And I think it's not about checking boxes, it's about hiring the best person for the role, but making sure that the pool of candidates is as diverse as possible, and that it includes all candidates, right? But that pool include Hispanics. I think what ends up happening is, and one of the pushes that I think for us is important at Havas is, looking at director and above, and making sure that director and above, that those obviously the entry level too, and as people are growing within the agencies, but from director and above, that we're hiring diverse talent, and that we're hiring Hispanic talent, and that talent also is put on track to grow. Because I think it's not about checking boxes, but it's about making sure that this talent, just like you at Edelman, that this talent has growth opportunity within their agencies or their city, wherever they're at.
I want to add that it cannot stop at just the recruitment. Once the person is placed in that leadership position, really the work begins as to giving them the visibility and the championing inside the organization that they deserve and they need. There are many success stories of those of us that make it into senior leadership. I was the first Latina GM, general manager at Edelman. So thank you. Thank you so much. And my team has had a tremendous success story that thankfully within Edelman, I have partners, allies, champions, call them whatever you want, that have opened the door so that my success story gets told around the network, so that I do get the seat at the table. Because sometimes just by being here, I'm not going to get the seat at the table. You need people that are above you that have those seats to pull. I'm not asking them to give up their seat for me. They need to put another chair next to theirs. And I was appointed GM 2 years ago. And when I was appointed GM, we were an office of 14 people. We are now an office of 40 people. And we became in 2021 the fastest growing office in the Edelman network in the world. So this is like fairy tale stories that need to be told. And shortly thereafter, I was appointed national chair of our Hispanic Latinx ERG, which is called Inclusivo. Somebody gave me that chair, but that chair came along with the most powerful executive sponsor, and her name is Ana Maldonado de Chepi, and she's in New York. And that is the woman that pulls up the extra chair and says, Carla needs to be here next to me. And that needs to happen beyond the recruitment and the hire.
Absolutely. Once you get there, open the doors for others,
And
right?
I just wanted to add one thing, that talent can also be seen by way of procurement of vendors, right? Sometimes in companies, there are voids that can't be filled, and you can tap into the business community, Latino business owners, right? And professionals that also hire other Latinos to fill in those gaps in terms of expertise needed within a corporation. And that's another valuable way. And on top of that, Latino entrepreneurs, since they're free from, I don't have a boss, right? So they're able to go toe to toe also with C-level executives that don't look like us and tell them, hey, have you thought about X, Y, Z, right? Because then we have that liberty to show up in our full power and be able to move the needle, you know, as well.
Jorge, I have a question for you. In your work at Havas and also being part of the DI committee at Havas, how do organizations ensure their team members feel a sense of belonging and purpose at work?
That's important, you know, because we can attract amazing talent, diverse talent, and then that they go out the back door because they don't feel part, you know, of the culture, right? And obviously a whole other conversation is adding, you know, remote work and virtual work and all that, and how you stay connected to the mission, right? What I could tell you at Havas, I can tell you about República Havas, and then I can tell you about Havas. At our agency, we want people to bring their full self to work. You know, whatever that means. You know, whatever makes you full at work, we want you to bring that to work. And recently, Havas does a global study. It's a confidential study around the world of all of our employees. It gets deployed to everybody, and it's done once a year. And I'm very proud to say that at República Havas, we got very high scores in this employee engagement study, but our highest score was our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. At 96% of our employees are proud of that. So obviously that for me is a very something that I'm proud of, right? And I think the same thing I could tell you, obviously you go to offices in other cities, maybe it's not as diverse, right? As our office in Miami, where, you know, obviously we're very representative of the South Florida community when you walk into our office, right? You know, we have over 25 nationalities, and Carla knows this because we used to work together. But another thing that I think is important that as I see Carla, is I'll get to that in a second because I want to speak to it in a second because I think it's important for this conversation. But as we look at the other offices, it's making sure that people feel they belong, right? Making sure that they feel that they don't feel like an outsider, making sure that they don't feel like they're the token XYZ, right? Making sure that there's others like them on their team, that there's others like them on their floor, that there's others like them in their department, that there's others like them in their building, right? And I think that's what's really important, that people feel that sense of belonging. And, you know, we also have a very strong Hispanic Latino ERG, very, very strong one. So I think in that regard, people feel part of it. But what I wanted to say, as I see Carla here, you know, something else that I end up spending my time with as you talk about C-suites is educate. You know, we're at, you know, here at the University of Miami, I find myself, and I think a lot of us find ourselves as educators. I find myself many times, you know, meeting with C-suites, meeting with boards of directors, meeting with people that have the decision-making power to have them understand, you know, what they're missing in not having Hispanics in leadership, not having Hispanics on their board, not investing in Latino communications, Latino marketing, right? As you look at the investment to this day, you know, hundreds of brands are still not investing in our market. And when I talk about investing, it's not only, you know, and yes, on Telemundo and on Univision and on others, in investing in Spanish. It's investing in our market in culture. It goes in language, of course, but it goes beyond language, right? It goes investing and making sure that we are represented on that screen, that we're representing in those commercials, that we're represented in that campaign. So, you know, find myself often, but I think that's a big part of this conversation too, right? So it's the talent side, but it's also that other side, which is making sure that these folks are understanding the opportunity they're losing by not having Hispanics at the table.
And that's why it's important to continue advocating for ourselves and for others.
And connection back to Carla, as we started our pharma business, it was just that. It was that. We have a big pharma business now in the healthcare, but it was going out there and preaching that we over-index, good or bad, because of what we eat on most chronic diseases, right? And so we need education in our community, right? On eating better, on preventing diabetes, on preventing heart disease, on preventing cancers, right? Our community lacks a lot of that information. So a lot of it is going out there and talking to these companies and talking to brands about the need to get to our community. And the good news is it's happened little by little, but it's starting.
And on that whole spectrum, ERGs play an important role as well. How do you, Carla, ensure that those ERGs can influence the leaders making those decisions at organizations?
Yes, ERGs play such an important role in that retaining of the talent and the celebrating the talent. At Edelman, when I became the leader of Inclusivo, we really took the Hispanic Promise to heart. And I have been helping with the Hispanic Star initiative for a couple of years. So we decided our mission have 3 pillars. So we're there to empower, we're there to celebrate, and we're there to help Latinos and Hispanics within Edelman connect. We are about 100 people now and moving strong. And then we took, for example, the Hispanic Star and created an initiative called the Hispanic Star by Inclusivo, which is a monthly spotlight. Just these people are in the shadows. I don't even know all of them, but really we have a log going. Every time we hear of somebody Hispanic join the company, I reach out, let's have a one-on-one, let's have a cafecito chat. I like to know where everybody is. This is extracurricular work, labor of love, but you have to do it. It is what gives them a sense of belonging. We created a beautiful template. It gets put on our US workplace. It gets sent via email. It gets on our newsletters. We also have our Círculo Familiar, which is a monthly, just 30-minute networking of getting anybody that wants to join to come talk on a monthly basis with each other about whatever topic. We have our quarterly newsletter, and then we have a quarterly guest speaking programming called Inclusivo Hablemos. This all in a matter of 2 years. I think when I started a list of how many Hispanics are in the company, at that point, I had the 20 people that I had at that point in the Miami office, a couple, 5 people in the New York office. I think we got to 30 max, and now we're 100 because they just come out of the woods and once you put programming together.
And do you involve leaders as part of those cafecito talks?
Yes, so definitely in our guest series, we have internal, external speakers. We, of course, have Anna's my executive sponsors. Then we have other executive sponsors in the local markets as well, because we now not only do national, but we make sure that we're engaging people locally. So who is your executive sponsor in the DC office, in the Chicago office, in the West? And my new boss, who's Oscar Suarez, president of Edelman, New York, he's Cubano-Americano from here, from Miami. Like, you need leaders that get it and leaders that let you do. You need to give people empowerment and permission and let them do, because this is all work that we want to do, that we wish somebody had done for us when we were junior in our organizations. So it is very powerful, the qualitative sort of stories that we hear about why people stay, about people feeling seen, about people belonging, about people telling us, we've never had this any other where that I've worked. I've never had this. And we activate our community as well in times of need. When the horrible Uvalde shooting happened, that same day, people got mobilized and we got people together under our Círculo Familiar, impromptu Círculo Familiar. Let's get people together. Let's talk. We're here. Let's have feelings. Let's
share.
Be there for each other.
Thank you for sharing. Now, Joy, following that lead, what projects, initiatives have you developed as the global BI leader for IBM, particularly done for Hispanics?
Before I get to that, I can't resist this one because it's amazing, because it's a great, let's thread the needle between what Jorge said about a sense of belonging and the importance of these employee groups. We also have employee resource groups. And one thing that we have talked about is data. How important is it to make sure that our programs are not only data-driven, human-centered, but evidence-based? And so when we looked at our business resource groups, we wondered, are they really more engaged? And so we took our employee engagement surveys, which we've been doing for decades. And over the past 5 years, we said, let's look at the engagement of the people that are participating in these groups. And what we discovered was fascinating. The first thing that we discovered was individuals who were leaders of these employee groups were 5 times more engaged than individuals that were not part of that group. And then take that to the members, because not everybody can be a leader in those groups. And there are obviously rotational positions. But when you have the members that are part of these groups, we discovered that they were 3 times more engaged than individuals that were not a part of these communities. And then we took this one step further because it's about sponsorship. Because every one of our employee resource groups, we have to have an executive sponsor. Lizette said this as well. You got to start at the top. You need to top down, bottoms up. It's all really important. But what we discovered was somebody said, but what about those executives that are part of your employee resource groups? How engaged are they? So we went back to the data and they were right in between. Executives who were executive sponsors of our employee resource groups were 4 times more engaged than those executives that were not. So a big shout out to those of you who have community groups, get involved and allow employees to be actively a part of it. So now to your question. I didn't forget it. So the question I think was, what are we doing? What are the
initiatives and how are you tracking success?
Okay, very good. So one of the things I think that we discovered, and Claudia talked about this at the very beginning, it's about action. We have to be purposeful to go from something like a promise to purposeful action. And one of the things I'd like to say that we do really well at IBM is we're intentional and we're deliberate. And so when you take that combination of let's be intentional and let's be deliberate, what we did was we said, okay, let's go ahead and focus on Hispanic talent. And we did this by looking at 4 specific programs. There were 4 strategic imperatives. Number 1 was all about mentorship. Number 2, it was all about sponsorship. And notice I didn't combine those 2 because mentorship, somebody said this earlier today, mentorship and sponsorship are not the same thing. The third thing that we really focused on was career velocity. Everyone has talked about this. I may be here, but how quickly do I go from where I am to where I want to go? So we really focused on career acceleration. And then the 4th element of our imperative was allyship. I mean, you're looking at a person who's sitting on the stage who understands that active allyship is important. And when we first launched these programs, we thought, let's start with the mid-career professional. And there were a couple of reasons we did that. Number 1, well, we were worried about pipeline. We were worried about succession planning. So this is where we are, but how are we going to fill that pipeline? So we initially focused on the mid-career professional. And there were 3 things that we discovered when we looked at the data. Because again, if we are IBM and we pride ourselves on being a data-driven, human-centered, evidence-based decision-making company, what did the data say? And we discovered that there were 3 meaningful outcomes. Number 1, individuals that participated in that career velocity program, they moved 3.5 times faster than individuals that didn't participate. That's amazing. The second thing that we discovered when we formally launched these programs was that our pipeline for Hispanic promotions, it grew year over year. And then the third thing that we discovered was when you looked at the data in particular, we said, well, what about inclusion and what about engagement? Because that was an important pillar. It was education, it was experience, it was about exposure. All of these programs enabled that to happen. So the last thing we discovered, we went back to our engagement scores and we said, well, what about their sense of belonging? What we discovered was individuals that participated in that program felt a greater sense of belonging year over year than individuals that didn't. And so that reinforced to us, not only was the intentionality important, but the measurements, the metrics, and most importantly, holding ourselves accountable at the end of the day.
Thank you so much for sharing it. And Samí, I know we're almost out of time, but how can we become better advocates for ourselves?
Yes, first I want to say, Joy, you're more than an ally, you're an accomplice. You're in the rank, just like punching away. I love it. Okay, so I just want to say that what binds us as human beings beyond once we feel like we belong is trust. And I think that's what we need to, that's why we need to exercise our advocacy muscle. Okay, it's nothing that we're born with. We learn how to advocate for each other and show up for each other. And so this is what I propose, to develop trust with your peers, right? Whether you're a business owner, whether you're working in a company or you're an intern, what have you, or a community leader. okay? When you enter these spaces, okay, see yourself, because as a Latino community, we see ourselves as invisible, right? It's like mind-boggling that we're so large in numbers and we're still invisible, but we need to become invincible. And this is how we do it. When you enter these spaces, start engaging, okay, with others. Esto como Secret Service, okay? If we're invisible, own it, okay? Secret Service. Meet people in key departments. Who are making the decisions? How are the processes? Start learning about the processes of vetting people to hire, vetting companies from the procurement standpoint. Start with community relations, with the human resources department, again, procurement, government affairs, the marketing and communications. Meet people in all of these areas and from all backgrounds, okay? And in that process, you're gonna start engaging and developing this, what I call peer-to-peer mentorship, right? I learn a lot from people that are younger than me and older than me, more experienced than me, and vice versa. And in that space, that's where trust, okay, is born, because it's the only way we're gonna get there, okay? And so then I heard Dr. Morty mention before, we gotta talk. Love you. She was dropping bombs, right? And I'm dying to talk to you further, okay? What's important here is that wherever in the spectrum you are, okay, whether more assimilated or llevas el corazón en el pecho all the time, okay? At the end of the day, I feel like more and more people and you know, are coming out of the shadows, someone mentioned, right? Because the sense of fear is dissipating, thank God, right? Of being discriminated against. And because we're realizing our power. And so like my husband, I used to call him a Latino incognito. Yeah, when I met him, like, you're Latino, ¿verdad? Because he could pass, okay? And I feel like that's the mistake that a lot of Latinos that are fair-skinned, right, that came before us, right, and were able to infiltrate these spaces, did us a disservice because we're so many, but we're invisible because we didn't exercise that advocacy muscle. So that's how we do it, okay? Learning from others, finding, you know, mentors within our organizations and finding out the processes. What practices are in place in the company or in the space I'm in that perpetuate inequities, okay? And what can I do to voice those concerns and affect change?
Thank you so much, Samí. And just one last thing, in one word, what does it mean for you, for each one of you, to be Hispanic? Or kind of. One word, and then we have to go.
I go first, so I get the easy one. It is pride.
Thank you, Lisette.
Put yourself out there and own it.
Thank you.
You know, I got to go with love.
There we go.
Say todo, everything.
Activismo, activism.
Thank you so much. Aren't they great?